It's hard to believe that we are already halfway through this year. Where has the time gone? At the beginning of every year, we often do a reflection. We reflect on the previous year, where things were in our personal life, in our finances. We naturally stop. And sometimes a lot of us do this mid-year as well. We stop and evaluate our finances, our business, our goals, maybe even our health. And sometimes that includes personal reflection. Sometimes it doesn't. But what I think we should do, and how often do we actually stop and ask, how's my soul doing? How's my heart doing? What is happening underneath the surface in my heart, in my soul, in my body, in my spirit? Today isn't just another teaching. Today is an invitation. I'm going to take you through a little journey where we're going to do some self-reflection and kind of consider some of these concepts, these thoughts. Today is an invitation. An invitation to slow down. It's an invitation to take a breath. It's an invitation to notice, to be curious. We've been talking about those two words a lot, to notice and to be curious. Because if we continually live our lives where we're constantly moving forward and we're constantly in action, then I think it's easy to ignore some of the things that are going on. And a really good question to reflect upon is, what's been draining me? What has been draining me in the past weeks, in the past month? So think about it. Over the past month, we've talked about feeling off. We've talked about internal contradiction. We've talked about the cost of being strong. And we've talked about becoming aware of ourselves without judging ourselves. And if you've been following along, you probably noticed things. You probably noticed maybe some things about yourself that you never really stopped to consider. And that really hadn't been on your radar before that, before we've taken this time together. And that's beautiful. The fact that we are having these conversations, the fact that we are taking these moments to reflect and to pause and to notice and to stay curious, it's a beautiful thing because awareness is doing exactly as it's supposed to do if we're taking the time. But before we start talking about next month's topic of realignment, I think it's really good that we take this week and just reflect. I don't want to push past or rush past what we've discovered. I just want us to sit here for a little bit. I want us to take a few moments this week and just consider just a few more things about where we are right now and what might be draining you. So, one thing I just think is kind of important to point out is that draining things that drain us, it's not always dramatic. Sometimes we assume that depletion comes through major life events, and sometimes it often does. That's not in question. We have major things happen. We get married, we have children, we lose a loved one, we get a new job, we move to a new location, we end relationships, we have financial loss. All those things, those are all major life shifts, some of them good, some of them not as positive, but they're all major life shifts that drain us. However, what we don't realize many, many times is that it's a slow fade. It's the small things, the constant interruptions, the endless mental capacity that just is overloaded. And if you're like me, I've had a tendency to replay things over and over in my head. I'm always reevaluating them. What could I have done better? What could I have said differently? How could the outcome been different if I, and then just fill in the blank with whatever you want to fill it in with. And I think one of the things that we don't always take the time to consider and take the time to realize is that carrying responsibility that isn't ours can be draining. Saying yes more than we say no, or saying yes when we really want to say no. We've talked about that in the past weeks. That can be draining. Living a life where we are disconnected from our own needs. Oh my gosh, that is just it's something that I have had a personal awakening about in my own life over the last, you know, several years, several months and years. As a mom with a lot of kids and working as a nurse, I constantly give, give, give. And when my kids were young, they had to take, there was just so much that I had to do to take care of them and to provide for them and to meet their needs. And then in the hospital to take care of my patients. And now as a nurse practitioner, I'm caring, but in a different way. We all have these things in our life that we have to say yes to, but sometimes we say yes to things that we don't really need to say yes to. Yes becomes an automatic word that just kind of rolls off our tongue. One of the things I used to tell my kids is when you ask me a question, my yes is yes and my no is no. And if I'm not sure, I'll say maybe. And I used to apply that to, when my kids would come in, can I have this? And can I have that? Can we do this? Can we do that? I wanted my yes to be yes. I didn't want to fluctuate so that my kids could trust me. I often did not apply those same principles to myself. I wanted my yes to be yes and my no to be maybe. And sometimes there was this incongruence within myself. And then that leads us to being disconnected from what we need and what we've overgiven to the point that we've neglected ourselves. And as a nurse practitioner, as someone who has to make decisions all the time, that chronic decision making becomes chronic decision fatigue. We just have so much we have to think about and process through, and all these decisions that we have to make. And, it could be as simple as what are we going to do for dinner and for lunch and for breakfast? And, whose turn is it to do this? And what are we going to do for the weekend? And those are the easy, fun things. But when you add those to everything else that we have to do for our life and our work and our family, and depending on what kind of work that we do, decision fatigue is a real um, overriding capacity that we often don't even take into consideration. And then how about the fact that we never fully rest? We slow down maybe to rest, but again, the mind's always going, and we never really because we're always thinking about, I should be doing this, or I need to do that, or what if and we always have this to-do list in our head. So we never really rest. One of the things that I've done that it's a hard stop, I will not compromise, is that I take my day of rest. I have my Sabbath. I do it on Saturday. And I don't care if I sit in my jammies all day long, which is my preference sometimes, depending on my week, or if I just take a walk with the dogs or read a book I often do a lot of self-reflection. But what if we don't take that time? What if we don't fully rest? What if we don't fully allow ourselves to have that restorative time? Think of it like this. If I were to go out and slash my tire with a knife, or if somebody did it for me, all the air would drain almost immediately. But what if I ran over a little nail and I'm driving along and it's little enough that it doesn't create like a bump in the ride, but slowly, 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 the air starts to leak out? Or what if I drilled a 1/4 inch hole into a bucket full of water? Within minutes, the bucket would be empty. But if it was a little pinhole, I might not notice that the level of the water was going down because tiny leaks are occurring and I'm not realizing it. But even tiny leaks can empty a bucket. And the same is true for our lives. If we have all these little things, and some of them are really good things, but if we have too many of them, we have all these little tiny leaks in our bucket. Think about if we have one hole versus if we have 10 tiny leaks, eventually the water is going to drain out of our buckets. And we need to pause and we need to notice. And our body keeps the score. There is a book that somebody wrote about this that I just really appreciate, and from a mental, spiritual capacity standpoint, I think it's just beautiful. And one of the things that I talk about in functional medicine is that the body always tells the truth. We can have a, a physical stimulus that can cause an emotional response. Like if I go over and I kick a brick wall so hard that I break my toe and then I start crying or I get angry, that was a physical stimulus that caused an emotional response. But the same thing can happen on the flip side. If I have something tragic happen, I actually might feel it in my body as a heart attack, something called broken heart syndrome. I had a patient one time. She looked on the EKG like she was having a heart attack. She had big tombstone changes. She had crushing chest pain. She was sweating. We took her into the cath lab. Her heart was totally fine. And as she's waking up, I'm holding her hand and I'm saying, "Hey, tell me what's going on." And she said, "I'm a widow. I'm all alone. The only thing I had in the world was my cat. I've had him for 20 years and he just died." Wow. That profound emotional thing created a shift in that lady's body that she looked like she was having a heart attack. But maybe it's not that profound. Okay. Maybe it's little things like, am I waking up tired every single day? Do I feel rushed all the time? Is my nervous system constantly on? Is my mind constantly going? And have I forgotten what deep rest really, truly feels like? Because our bodies, they're not betraying us. In fact, I think they're trying to tell us something. They're communicating something. If we don't stop and listen, how will we know? We talked in another episode about how these little things over time, when people come to see me, those symptoms were there for a long time usually, and it wasn't that they were profound. They weren't huge. They were little tiny things that over time accumulated. Our body is always trying to tell us something if we are listening. And here's the thing, depletion, it's not a sign of weakness. It's information. It is paying attention and not ignoring it. That's the goal. The goal is to pay attention. It's to listen and not ignore the signal so that things don't become so overwhelming that then we have some kind of a complete shutdown where we're just, fall into depression or fall into anxiety, or life just feels, there's just lackluster. There's no joy. The goal with this information is to stay curious and to listen to what our body is trying to tell us. So here's the other thing. And this is probably one of the most important points here. We don't have to earn rest. Many of us treat rest like a reward. Again, guilty as charged. We say to ourselves things like, well, I'll rest when the work is done. Everybody else is okay. That basket of laundry is folded. Every bed is made. Every toy is put away. My inbox is empty. The house is clean. I weeded the garden, picked up all the dog do. When? I'll rest when. And those moments rarely, if ever, come. There's never a time when every single thing is, all the stars are going to align and everything in our life is going to be like 100% A-okay. And then we can go, oh, now I can rest. Because rest is not something that we have to earn by checking everything off of our to-do list. It's part of God's design. It's what I mean, he rested, right? He created for 6 days, and on the seventh day he rested. And in the Torah, the first five books of the Bible, he tells us very, very plainly, we are to take a day of rest. He even calls that day holy. It's something that's sanctified, set apart. We are to rest because it's holy. And rhythm, that rhythm that we find ourselves in our daily lives, from one moment to the next, from one day to the next, it includes both work and restoration. It's not an either or, it's a both and. And if we are always, always, always pouring out and pouring out, eventually the pitcher, think of our life as a pitcher, and everything that we have to give is a pitcher full of water. If we don't stop and put our pitcher underneath the spigot or the Berkey, if you are like me and have filtered water, if we don't stop and put our pitcher underneath the spigot and fill it back up, we eventually are going to pour out to every last drop is gone and there's nothing left. There's nothing left to give. That's what healthy leadership looks like. That's what healthy caregiving looks like. That's what healthy living looks like. Every one of those things require replenishment. Leadership, caring, living life in relationship with others and in relationship with ourself, it all requires replenishment. So instead of asking yourself, what can I do? How can I do more? What if we ask ourselves, what is quietly draining me? And then as we notice, as we reflect upon that, instead of adding another goal, because wouldn't that be like the most ironic thing is we're noticing the things that drain us. And so yet we add another thing to our to-do list that has been draining us. What if instead of adding something to the list, what if we consider one burden that we can be easily remove? Or maybe it's not so easy to remove, but it's a necessary thing to remove. Because sometimes growth isn't about addition. Sometimes it's found in subtraction. Subtraction is often looked upon as a negative, but if it doesn't occur in some instances, think about hormones in the body. If we constantly produce, say, estrogen, too much estrogen creates crazy symptoms in women. But fortunately, our bodies are made in a way that it's an on-off switch. And the body is built and designed to signal estrogen, but then calm it down so it doesn't get too much. That is the way it should be. Subtraction isn't necessarily a negative thing. Sometimes it's putting on the brakes is a good thing. Creating space is definitely not laziness. We definitely cannot look at it in that regard. It's a positive thing. Creating space, it's wisdom. I want to be wise. That's one of the things in the Proverbs 31 woman that I just find so amazing is she did so many good things and she was so wise. And I don't think she did all of those things that are listed out every single day, every moment of her life. I think there were seasons, but I think the wisdom was that she was able to, push her gas pedal and put her brakes on and had these seasons and these rhythms that she took in her life. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to accomplish all those things. So, what I want you to do is take a minute. I want you to pause. In the Bible, there's this word that's inserted into the Psalms, and we don't really know what it means, but what we think it means is pause, think on these things, reflect upon these things. So maybe you just want to pull out a journal, or you can listen and then come back and listen again and pull out a journal. Sit quietly with these questions. What has been consistently draining my energy? What leaves me feeling most alive? Where do I feel obligated instead of called? What relationships replenish me and which ones constantly deplete me? What has my body been trying to tell me? Where have I ignored my own limits? Where have I said yes when I probably could have said no? It would have been better to say no. And if I could release one, just one unnecessary burden this month, what would that be? And lastly, what would living with more of a margin actually look like? So take a moment and just reflect on those things. If you've never downloaded the alignment check that I created, this is a perfect week to do it. It's designed to help you notice these patterns with honesty and with compassion. There's no scores. It's just yes, no, just a noticing, just a curiosity. And there's no judgment. It's just between you and you. But it's going to bring greater awareness. You'll find the link below. And I invite you to take a moment and go grab that. Thank you for spending this month with me where we have been talking about awareness. But truly, honestly, awareness was never the destination. It was simply the beginning. Next week or next month, we're going to begin something really beautiful. We're going to begin talking about alignment, not striving harder, but learning how to come back into agreement with the person that you already know yourself to be. You already know her. You might recognize her. You've just forgotten what she looks like. So we're going to bring her back into the forefront. But until then, be gentle. Be gentle with yourself. Create a margin, create a space. Listen to what your life has been telling you. And remember, sometimes the smallest adjustments create the deepest transformations. I hope that this has blessed you, and I hope that you actually take a moment and pause and reflect. And I will see you next week.